నమస్కారం. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం విద్యార్థులకు స్వాగతం. ఈ ప్రసారంలో Welcome students to the tele-lesson program of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. This tele-lesson program is intended for the Master of Library and Information Science students. In this tele-lesson, we will be discussing the topic citation indexing and citation analysis, which is a part of the course 6 research methodology. The researcher can use any of the several methods like historical research, experimental research or survey research. Apart from these techniques, bibliometrics is an established technique available for the researcher, and citation analysis is a part of the bibliometrics. Apart from the research, the librarian performs several duties in a library like acquisition of the books, selection of the books, acquisition of the books, organizing and disseminating the information to the user community. By using the citation analysis, the librarian can identify which are the best journals available in a subject, or who are the authors contributing most number of articles or most number of books to a particular subject. So, we can use this citation analysis for the day-to-day purposes also in a library. So, to discuss this topic in more detail, we have with us in the studios Shri P.Divakar. He is the head of the Knowledge and Information Group of CCMB. Welcome you, sir, to this tele-lesson program. To start the program, sir, can you tell our students when and how this particular concept has come into existence?
Citation indexing has a very long history. To be precise, during the 19th century, before librarians started using the citation analysis and citation indexing, the legal profession was making use of it. As you know, when a judge pronounces a judgment, he will refer the previous judgments in his document. So, a person by name Shepherd, he established a relationship between the current judgment and the past judgments referred in the present judgment. So, the result was Shepherd's index to legal judgments. So, this was there for quite some time, and lawyers and judges were depending on it to do a literature search on contemporary legal matters. It was actually there since 19th century, but subsequently a person by name Eugene Garfield brought this concept into sciences, into natural sciences. Eugene Garfield, as you know, was working in a medical indexing project in America, and he realized that the normal traditional subject indexing has certain limitations. For example, when we do subject indexing, what exactly we do is we assign some keywords to a given article or put it under specific subject heading. So, in this process we are using some kind of a subjectivity, and we always have the problem of terminology, jargon. So, we need to fall upon some resource what we call thesaurus, with which our students are familiar with. So, to overcome all these problems, Eugene Garfield found a novel way of indexing literature. So, what he thought was there is always a relation between current literature and the past literature. What he found was a contemporary article in any subject. You know, if you look at it, at the end of that article, it will have a bibliography of the past articles. So, he found that there is always a link between a semantic link between the past article and the present article which is citing it. So, he created an index to that, he called it citation index. So, that is the origin of citation indexing, and this actually started in 1960s, and he came out with printed science citation index initially. Subsequently, he extrapolated the concept to social sciences. He came out with social sciences citation index. He also came out with arts and humanities citation index.
So, our library and information science students are very familiar with an index as arranging the different concepts in a particular subject or a particular book, and then giving a location. Arrange these words are arranged in some systematic order. It may be alphabetical order, or it can be chronological order, and a location is given to that particular, that what we call as an index, a normal index. So, can you tell us exactly what is the difference between a normal index and a citation index?
Right. Normally, in normal traditional searching, we start with a current paper and then go backwards. In other words, we do backward searching. We start with a current book or a current article and see what are all the references given in the back of that article and go backwards. But in citation indexing or citation searching, what we do is we just do the opposite. We start with an old established seminal article or book on a given area and then see who is citing it currently. So, what exactly it means is we are doing forward searching. So, for example, our students are familiar with library classification. Okay. If you want to perform a search on theory of library classification, one way of doing is you go to some indexing system like LISA and then put the words library classification. Okay, that is a normal way of doing a search. But another novel way of doing search is, we all know that S.R. Ranganathan has written Prolegomena to library classification, which is a seminal work in library classification. So, we can reasonably assume that any contemporary research happening today would definitely cite Ranganathan's Prolegomena to library classification. So, a novel way of looking for latest classification articles is go to a citation index and see who are citing our Ranganathan's Prolegomena to library classification currently. So, this is a new way of searching information. So, this you can extrapolate to any area. You can use it for superconductivity, you can use it in biotechnology, in any area of contemporary science. You start with an older seminal paper and then see who is citing it currently and then do a kind of a forward searching. So, when Garfield designed the searching, designed this citation index, the print one had actually 3 parts. The first part is the citation index, the second part is the source index, the third one is the permutum subject index. So, these set of indexes help us in doing a variety of searches.
So, can you explain how to search using a print version, and is there any difference of developing a search strategy for print version as well as for the online version?
Certainly. See, when Garfield started it in 1960s, there was no internet, there were no computerized indexing, whole thing was done manually. So, all of us we used to do searches in a manual way. So, to facilitate manual searching, so Garfield has split the citation index into 3 parts: the source index part, the citation index part and the permutum subject index part. Suppose a contemporary researcher wants to find information on a given subject. Just as he searches chemical abstracts or biological abstracts or InSpec. Okay. So, in that context, you start your search with the permutum subject index. So, go to the permutum subject index, choose your term. Suppose you want some information on superconductivity. So, go to the volume which starts with the term S. Go to the volume that has S on the spine and then go to superconductivity, see what are all the items indexed under superconductivity. In permutum subject index, what SCI does is it uses the natural language used by the authors. There is no artificial subject heading or artificial keywords inserted into that. The actual words are picked up from the titles of the publications and they are permuted using a computer algorithm. And then search is facilitated by that. That the normal subject search. Apart from that, the novel way of searching literature in SCI is through citation indexing. So, in the citation index, what it does is it arranges all the cited articles alphabetically by the first author. That means, you need to know the name of the precise name of the first author of a seminal paper. You start with that, go to the citation index, look under alphabetically under the name of the first author and see what are all the citations received today. For example, suppose Watson and Crick has published a seminal paper on DNA structure in 1950s. If anybody is doing anything current on DNA structure today, will definitely cite Watson and Crick. So, go to the citation index, open the volume with W, go to Watson and then see who is citing it currently. So, that is, we are starting with an older concept, older paper and doing a forward searching to the current year. And then the third part in the citation index is the source index. Source index actually indexes all the current papers, alphabetically by the first author of the publication. And the source index also has what we call corporate index. The corporate index also is very extremely useful for identifying what are all the publications originating from a given institution or a university. For example, if you want to know what are all the publications coming out of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, you go to the corporate index of Science Citation Index, look under India. It is because the index is arranged country wise. First you go to India. So, under India you look up under Hyderabad under H. So, you go to under H you will find Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Go to B.R. Ambedkar Open University, the heading will be there in bold. Under B.R. Ambedkar University, all the authors from B.R. Ambedkar Open University, whoever has published in that period will be listed alphabetically by the name of the first author. So, at one place you will identify what are all the publications coming out of a given university. So, similarly, suppose you want to find what are all the scientific research generated from University of Hyderabad, go to University of Hyderabad and then see what are all the papers under University of Hyderabad. So, you can also at one place, you can identify what is the research, scholarly research generated by a given organization.
So, we can as well ascertain the productivity of the institutions using this corporate index. We can as well compile a ranking of the institutions also using
absolutely, this. Absolutely. Science citation, these citation index actually help us in the modern day to evaluate the productivity of institutions. We can also evaluate the productivity of individuals. We can also evaluate the productivity of vehicles of communication, like for example, a journal. Suppose if you want to evaluate a particular journal, you can use all these data. For example, a journal which is cited several times, can be assumed to be a superior journal than a journal which is cited less number of times. So, these decisions are very useful for librarians in deciding which journals are to be subscribed for a given audience. Especially this assumes importance when budgets are very tight and librarian has to take very hard decisions on identifying the best journals in a given subject area. So, the citation analysis helps us in identifying which are the most cited journals in a given area. So, that is from the collection development point of view. And similarly, as you have rightly said, it also helps us in identifying who are the best authors in a given area, who are the best cited authors in a given area, and this is useful not only for identifying literature in a particular area, the best literature in a particular area, but also the people are using it for deciding who could be the possible candidates for nomination for a given award. For example, how do I identify who could be Nobel laureates? For example, the Nobel committee also is looking at the citation data. For example, in India we have Bhatnagar awards, the best award for any scientist can aspire for. So, the Bhatnagar awards, for Nobel prizes, so various awards, the citation data also goes into the input for the selection committee. So, because the assumption here is a scientist who is cited more times perhaps has contributed more qualitatively to that field than candidates who have been cited less frequently. So, that is one assumption. Similarly, for hiring decisions also, suppose you want to identify a person for a professor job in a university and you have some 50 candidates, you do citation analysis of all the 50 candidates and see who are the best cited among these candidates. So, this also can go as an important criteria for shortlisting the candidates for hiring decisions, and people are using it world over for hiring decisions. So in that sense, for evaluating science, for evaluating people, these citation indexes are extremely useful. And we can also do mapping of science. For example, we can also compare countries, how India is performing in a given area, how China is performing in a given area, how Brazil is performing in a given area, based on how many times Indian research is cited, how well the Chinese research is cited, how well the Brazilian research is cited. We can make some very interesting conclusions based on this kind of analysis.
So, there are several advantages of using this citation indexing. We can use it for, as you have said, we can use it for assessing the productivity of the institutions, productivity of the authors, and also the productivity of the journals, so on and so forth. So, is there any way we can ascertain the obsolescence of literature? Like if a book is not cited currently in the past some 5 or 6 years or so, so then we can we say that it is no more in use? How to ascertain? Is there any technique?
Yeah, obsolescence of literature, is very interesting area to dwell upon. For example, in the outer space, new stars are born, stars die. Similarly, same thing happens in literature also. New subjects give birth and old subjects actually give way. So how do we identify which are the new subjects and which are the old subjects that are fading away? Okay, so citation analysis helps us in a big way in this. For example, suppose you take a traditional subject, if people are not citing it currently, that means the rate of obsolescence in that area is more. So that means that subject is perhaps getting outdated. Not many people are referring to literature in that subject. That indicates that it's an outdated or an old fashioned research subject. So on the contrary to that, if a particular area is receiving more citations, a particular subject is receiving more citations, so that means it's a hot area in science, for example. Okay, for example, if you look at nanotechnology, for example, if you go to the science citation index, you see that nanotechnology area is receiving maximum number of citations. So that means for young researchers, to decide which area to look at for research. So this kind of data helps, and also it gives very interesting observations on where research is getting concentrated, where contemporary work is going on. So which are in other words, which are the hot areas in any given discipline. So to identify the hot areas, the science citation index helps us in a big way.
So can you tell us what is this impact factor and how to arrive at this impact factor? Can you please explain to our students?
Sure. As you said, impact factor gives a numerical value to the quality of a given journal. How this impact factor is calculated is, it is based on the average citation rate of a given journal. For example, you take the year 2012. 2012 impact factor of a journal is calculated based on how many times all the source items means the actual papers published in that journal during the previous 2 years, that is 2010 and 2011 are cited during the current year, that is 2012. So, the formula for that is the total number of citations received by that journal to the source items of 2011 and 2012 during the current year divided by the total number of items that it has published. In that sense, it is an average citation rate of a given journal. So, if a journal receives more number of citations, its impact factor will be high, and generally the people rate a higher impact factor value as a higher qualitative ranking of that journal.
So, we have, apart from these concepts which we have discussed, there are also other citation index other than the Science Citation Index. There is the Web of Science and also the Scopus, and the Google Scholar is another search engine which most of the scholars and users make use of this Google Scholar. So, apart from this, what is the difference between the Google Scholar and using the other citation indexes?
As of now, there are 3 citation indexes available on the internet. One is the Web of Science, which is the online version of the traditional or old Science Citation Index. And about 5-6 years back, Elsevier Science, they came out with a competitor for the Web of Science. They named it Scopus. Scopus is also a citation platform. So, one can perform searches on Scopus also. So, Scopus and Web of Science, these two are actually pay services. You need to pay for them, you need to subscribe to those resources if your library has to use that. And you have rightly mentioned the third one, the Google Scholar. So, Google Scholar is an open source or a free citation analysis tool. Anyone can go to Google Scholar and perform a search. But there is some difference. People find some difference in the quality of searching available in Google Scholar and Web of Science and Scopus. So, there are more facilities, more features. So more data available in Web of Science and Scopus. More interfaces are available. More search facilities are available. You can generate wonderful graphics using the Scopus and Web of Science, whereas Google Scholar has some limitations because it is a free search engine. And in Google Scholar, it is all robotic indexing, just like Google, so it picks up randomly every resource that is available on the internet, and using a robotic process, it creates the index. Whereas in Scopus and Web of Science, they have some theory behind that. They do it in a very systematic way. So, in that sense, so Google Scholar and Web of Science, Scopus, there is a difference in the quality of the output when we perform a search.
To sum up, in this tele lesson, we have discussed what is a citation analysis and how it is different from a normal index, and we have seen the structure of a Science Citation Index and how it is organized, and the different online versions that are available, the Web of Science and the Scopus, and what is the difference between the Google Scholar and the other citation indexes. And we have also discussed how the multiple uses of citation indexing to the librarians as well as to the different scientists, also how it can be used to predict the possible Nobel laureates or Nobel Prize winners, and also the multiple advantages for acquisition, organizing the collection, and also dissemination of information to the user community.
మా కార్యక్రమాలపై మీ సూచనలు సలహాలు ఆహ్వానిస్తున్నాం. మీ సూచనలు సలహాలు మాకు తెలియచేయవలసిన చిరునామా: డైరెక్టర్, ఆడియో విజువల్ ప్రొడక్షన్ అండ్ రీసెర్చ్ సెంటర్, డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ, ప్రొఫెసర్ జి రామరెడ్డి మార్గ్, రోడ్ నంబర్ 46, జూబ్లీ హిల్స్, హైదరాబాద్ 500033.